Hey everyone, it's David. I'm back with another one of our holiday chat guests. This is Chris, who helped me learn how to get a blurry background for the first time ever on Zoom. And so we're both going to sit here with blurry backgrounds today. Chris, you've just done a deal to buy a business. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the deal and about the business, and then we can get into the meat of what you wanted to talk about today.
Yep. So started in July, identified this commercial landscaping company. They do about 2.6 million revenue. Um, they do both, commercial landscaping and commercial civil, and about 500,000 in EBITDA. Um, and that's just through into November.
You're
So
you're you're
yeah,
starting
the
to
December
you're,
slight,
you're
so
Chris, you're
probably won't
starting to
go too much
Chris
higher than that. But
Chris, your audio's all
um,
breaking. Chris,
that's pretty much the. Uh,
Chris, your audio's all breaking up. I'm going to turn your video off, okay? To save bandwidth because I
yep.
think you're on a cell connection. Okay. So
Okay.
what I heard is that the business, it's commercial landscaping. It does it about 2.6 million in revenue, about 500,000 of EBITDA, and that's as much as I heard.
Yeah, that's essentially all the important points. Um, so, are you able to hear me now a little bit better?
Oh yes, much better. Yep.
Okay. Perfect. Um, so we just closed November 21st.
Okay.
Um, we originally scheduled to close October 31st, which one of the unique things that, this is done through the SBA, through, a commercial lender, and we secured 100,000 of, express small business line of credit. Um, and, the way the deal was structured was net of cash and AR. Um, so that was kind of, I guess it was kind of tight from a timing perspective in terms of cash flow. So um, if we had hit our October 31st settlement timeline, then the weather that we had here in November was actually kind of warm. So the fact that my closing was delayed until November 21st, I missed out on 220,000 in billables. So um, that, and because we are a commercial landscaping company, most of our customers are net 30 to 45 days, and
Yep.
some of our like state contracts are by they're net 30, right? They're net 45, but by the time they get around to actually paying out, they're probably out at 60 days. So it creates a unique cash flow issue from a timing perspective. Coming in November 21st, we've had a couple of weeks here where we've had some on their own profitable work to bill out, but from a volume perspective, it isn't enough to like get you through.
Hmm.
Um, and because I didn't acquire the existing AR, probably like I should have, that's going to create at least a month of all expenses, right? Just having to carry the
Yep.
expenses before anything comes in. And what does come in will be light. I think in the first 3 weeks of the business, about 40,000 in billables. The monthly overhead, including the loan cost, which is it's the SBA loan amount is 6 months interest only,
Hmm.
or interest only for the first 6 months. So that's about 45,000 in fixed expenses per month. Um, and the challenge that we find in the snow business is that your margins are probably 60%. However, for our size of business, if one significant snow event can really put you in a bind because you got to pay the guys out, within a week after the event, but then you're not going to get the AR, not be able to collect for 30, 60 days. So I'm in a unique position where I don't think 100,000 line of credit is enough for a
Yeah.
significant event. Um, and you know, it's one of those things where I need light snowfall, light salting events. Um, but I do need some of those events because I certainly wouldn't be able to carry all the way to next April when the landscaping season kicks back up. So curious to see like what your perspective is on additional working capital or ways to get additional working capital. I've reached out to like a Wells Fargo small business line, which is unsecured, like a Blue Vine or a Cabbage and some of the other options
Mhm.
available. I certainly have family and friends in my own 401k that I could borrow loans for to support, but just curious on what your perspective is.
Sure. So let me ask you a few questions though about how the business is organized. You have summertime lawn maintenance contracts, customers, and then you also have wintertime salting, sanding, snow removal.
Yes.
Do you do seasonal fixed price contracts, or are you billing? Sounds like you're billing by the hour or per the event for some of this stuff.
Yeah, the snow is billable by the hour, or by the snowfall amounts with some of them. But I think we've been able to move over all of like the landscaping contracts. There's some that are like fixed price, right? They pay out monthly over 12 months, and that can create its own issues. We've kind of moved away from that into um, you know 26 mowings a year, and they're paid out between April and November. The mowing season.
Okay. And so when people have the mowing season contracts, are they paying at certain intervals through the season, or you're billing them all, over 8 months or 12?
I'm billing them after like a week after, 2 weeks after we've completed the mowing cycle.
Okay. And so I'm just asking these questions just to figure out at what point in the spring you should have an influx of money. But it sounds like you need to even do work before the first checks will arrive in the spring. You don't have people that have to make like a beginning of season deposit towards their contract or anything like that.
Exactly. So I don't have any upfront deposits on any of the contracts. So typically, what would happen is February and March, we're getting out to the athletic fields, and we're starting to prep the athletic fields. April, the weather change here on the East Coast starts to really kick in, and then April's probably a heavy payroll month as you get going, and then you got to make it to May on your net 30 days for these contracts with different school districts and Department of Transportation, stuff like that. So
Okay.
you
And
really have to
how
get to May.
so everyone's on 30 or 45-day terms, and what is the typical mode of payment?
They are usually sending checks or,
Mhm.
or sometimes ACH.
Okay. And so have you created a cash flow forecast from now until sometime middle of next year showing what you expect might happen, what the costs will be going out when the money is expected to arrive? Do you know just exactly how big the deficit is that you need to cover?
I've only looked at it from an expense standpoint. So from a variable cost and fixed cost build up, including my debt service. So from that perspective, through if we didn't have any income coming in, um, I would get through the end of April with a cumulative total of 473,000. I could probably that would probably be lower in if I cut back on some labor in January and February. It was kind of be like, hey, if we have no snow and it's just like it's Miami weather, through January and February, I'd cut back on labor. But I think that 473,000 is a normal level.
So that includes your labor costs too?
Yeah.
And so what is normal with this business? Do they just keep everyone on all through the season, or do they lay people off and just call them in when there's work?
Um, Through the off season, which is the snow season, we lay them off and call them in for specific storms. But
Okay.
that's a cumulative, like from today, the 473 is a cumulative total. um, through the end of April. So if I'm looking at now through the end of April, I'm looking at total cost of or total expenses of 473,000.
Okay. So you need to do some sort of estimate of the sales and the money coming in,
Mhm.
because you know that you're not going to end up just shelling out 400,000 with no money coming in between now and the end of April. There's going to
Yeah.
be some money flowing in,
Yep.
and you have the past records of this business, correct?
Correct.
Right. So you can look through and find out what their sales were in the month of January over the last few years. And you can even be conservative, like use the lowest one, just guess that things are going to be slow, for example. But
Yeah.
then you have to make another one where you guess that things are going to be busy, because if you're busy and have more sales, I mean, it sounds good, but that means you have to pay more
Yeah.
payroll
Yeah.
before you get the money coming in, right?
Yeah.
So this is a situation where um, getting busier and making more sales can actually sink you faster,
Hmm.
right? And so you need to make the forecast, because you need to find out what you think the ultimate hole might be. Because without a plan that shows you what the ultimate hole might be, you don't know what your fundraising target is as far as finding these different lines of credit, right? Like
Yeah.
you said that you applied for Wells Fargo, and was that like an automated application? Did you put down a number of what you were looking for, or in that
Yes.
application, how did you ask for what you wanted?
Yeah. So I've got the 100,000 through, that came with SBA, that came part of the package of the closing package.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and went to Wells Fargo for another 100K. At the same day, applied through like Blue Vine, and they approved me for 170K.
Okay.
So that's kind of where I was just trying to get to that total. And talking with the seller during our transition, he's like, I would have liked you to have been in a position to have maybe like 250,000. That would easily get you to next spring. So that's the numbers I was working off of. Um, and I was just trying to, like I said, get access to those lines, right? Because if you're able
What
to get
what's the cost of the Blue Vine money?
um like on a like an APY of like 18%, it's
Pricey.
12 months. Yeah, it's pricey. And then, it's a 3% origination fee on each draw, which is, that's, I don't
That's
think
it.
that's not factored into the 18%.
Yeah. That's if you only use the money for a couple of months, that's another 18 to 36% of
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It's quite painful.
Yeah.
Um, so that's why I was trying to go Wells Fargo first because it's prime plus 4.9.
Okay.
And it's, 5 years, just like more traditional bank line of credit. Whereas like Blue Vine's got the origination fee and, it's just much more costly.
Have you gone through your costs and looked at what can be paid with a credit card and what can't?
Yes. So I have a lot of vendors that are on net 30, and honestly, it's a little bit further actually because they send you the bill at the end of the month and then you have net 30 from it. I've looked at, all of our gas cards, right? And hold off on filling up the trucks for the snowstorm until like, a day or two before the snowstorm. So we've got runway there. I've got a couple like Home Depot, a 20,000 line of credit there, Amex, a 20,000 line on the Amex business card.
Mm-hmm.
So I quickly applied to several of the cards to get as much runway as possible from them.
Okay.
Uh,
And so when when you create this cash flow forecast,
mhm.
um, you might want to go and look for some kind of Excel spreadsheet or calendar where you can do this by the day, that
Okay.
has the calendar dates. Because one of the things you're going to want to do is you're going to want to put the cycle cutoff for the different credit cards, and then when the card would be due.
Okay.
Okay. Because here's the kind of thing that you may end up doing. because the Amex and maybe a Visa card that you have may have cutoff dates that are on opposite sides of the month. So one might be on the 1st, one might be on the 15th. So you might decide on the 16th to start using the credit card that cuts off on the 15th.
Yes.
So you can use that for 2 weeks and then get another 14 days before they issue the statement, and then get another 21 days before you have to pay it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And you kind of bounce back and forth between those two cards, trying to maximize the number of days that you can possibly stretch them out. The other thing is that there are expenses that you cannot pay with a credit card.
Yeah.
Things like your SBA interest payment, your loan payment, right?
Yep. Yep.
But there is a service online called Plastique.
Okay. With a Q?
Plastiq. Yeah, Plastique with a Q.
Okay.
And so what they do is they turn credit cards into cash. So they charge you the merchant discount fee approximately in order to have a wire sent somewhere.
Okay.
So if you need to wire 10 grand to someone, they'll charge you 10 grand plus 2.9%.
Okay.
Right? They'll charge you $10,290. But the end recipient will receive a wire transfer for 10,000. So one of my other clients who had an operating capital crisis, he was telling me that because he got himself like one of these 2% cashback cards, he would use that with Plastique. So his net cost was a fraction of 1%.
That's interesting.
Okay. Because he would use a 2% cashback card for Plastique and end up with his reward being approximate, just a little bit shy of what they were charging him.
Interesting. Yeah. Financial engineering.
Well, it's called juggling.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so these are your tools. You're going to array your tools to see what you have to play with. And another thing that you need to take a look at is on your receivable side. So I had a client who was in the similar boat where they had an operating capital shortfall and they didn't realize they were going to have a shortfall. They actually borrowed money and bought a business without sufficient operating capital, which describes your situation, right?
Yep.
And so what we did is we looked at their different customers, and everyone was paying them in 30 or 45 days. When you issue an invoice, are you issuing your invoices immediately?
It's usually as soon after the work is completed as possible.
Okay, but you're not waiting to the end of the week or any kind of silly cycle like that.
No, it's for example, we just had work that we completed Monday. I billed it out yesterday, so I just try to be pretty quick.
Yeah. And so what kind of customer was that? Was it a big company or like a mom and pop business? Like, can you describe the customer generally to me?
That was a property management company, and they were just going to bill it back to the HOA.
Okay. So on your invoice to them, do you put a due date? So do you say this bill is due on this day, like the phone company does?
Actually, no.
Yeah. So this is one of the first things you want to address is you want to actually have a written policy on your invoices that say when it's due.
Okay.
So if someone is a 30-day account and you issue it on the 5th of the month, then you want to put on there that it's due on the 4th of the following month. You want to put a due date like the phone company does, right?
Okay.
And then do you accept credit cards?
I don't think I've ever taken a credit card payment now.
Okay. Do you have the ability to?
We could. Yeah. I don't see why we couldn't.
Oh, but I mean, do you have like a Square account or Stripe or something set up that someone could call you and say, here's my card number?
Not currently, no.
Okay. So you'll want to do that today after this call.
Okay.
Because on your invoice, here's what you want to do. You want to say this invoice due in full, by check or ACH on, for example, January 4th.
Okay.
And then you want to have Visa, MasterCard, American Express accepted within 5 days of invoice for payment for payment.
Okay.
So you do not want to wait 30 days and then have someone call you with a credit card,
Okay.
because then you had to wait 30 days and then it's going to cost you a credit card discount fee.
Yeah.
You want to make the credit card companies earn their fee by shortening your days payable outstanding. It's called DPO is the vernacular in this game.
Yep.
So
Okay.
so what you will find is that there are probably some businesses that you're working for that have some individual owners who are, airline points junkies,
Yep.
who have probably told their payable staff to put everything they can onto credit cards because they want to collect their air miles.
Gotcha.
And so you want to entice those companies to pay you right away, because this is going to be a big part of the solution to your cash flow issue.
Okay.
It's going to cost you that credit card discount fee, but it's going to accelerate the receipt of the money by 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay. Yep.
Okay. So your goal is twofold: push payments out as far as possible into the future, accelerate the receipt of money.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yep.
Because in your situation, going out and getting new customers, for example, that's going to be tough.
Yeah.
Right. However, you should have an idea of what you would do if somebody called you up and asked you, can you take care of this for us?
Mm-hmm.
Who knows what happens out in the field? Some plow driver somewhere could drive a snowplow and break something.
Yeah.
And then they say, well, we don't want these guys anymore. We want to move our service to someone else. So if someone were to call you today and say, can we get you to take care of our snow removal for the season? What would you say to them? You don't want to make it up on the fly. You want to be prepared, which is why I'm asking you. So do you have an idea of, if somebody called up and said, I want you to do my snow removal this year, would you be able to figure out a fixed contract price for the season for them?
Yes. Yeah. We have all of our rates and stuff.
Okay.
So it'd be pretty quick and easy to respond and give them an estimate.
Okay. Because what you would want to do is you would not want to be billing them for service performed. At this point, we're so far into the season where snow is about to start accumulating here, right? We're at the 11th hour as far as winter. Mm-hmm. 2023 is going. We're recording this in the first week of December 2022. Yeah. So if someone called up and said, I want you to do my snow removal, you want to be able to say, okay, let me go drive over, take a look. And then you say, to do your snow removal for the year is going to be, $7,500.
Yep.
Then you can immediately say, half due now, half due March 15th or March 1st.
Okay.
And you can say, you can just give me the 2 checks right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Because you want to be able to take any opportunity you have to get a new customer to create some more instant cash flow. And if anyone is calling you midway through December to take care of their snow removal for the year, they're in a jam.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something has gone wrong. It should have been dealt with long ago, right?
Yep. Yeah, no, that's a great point. Great tip there.
Yeah. And I mean, if you have time on your hands, you certainly could go around knocking on doors. It's just going to be tough this time of year. Most people have already committed probably.
Yeah, we did have a commercial client that reached out and they were like, hey, we're looking for our HOA to get to snow removal. And I'm like, wow, it's really late in the season for that. So we just sent that bid out. So it does happen. I think there's probably other accounts that I can be proactive and email and reach out and say, hey, we've been hearing a lot of snow contractors pull out last minute. If this happens to you, we're certainly here to step in.
Yep. Here's another question: is there anyone whose lawn you cut that whose snow you do not remove?
Yeah, there's multiple. We've kind of used either the landscaping as an in to the snow, or using the snow contract as an in to the landscaping. What typically happens in the commercial space is that we're bidding out the landscaping in January. They're bidding out the snow in August, September,
Mhm.
August, and then anyone who's later than that bidding out their snow work is, like you said, last minute, in trouble probably.
Yeah. When I used to own apartments, and I hired these guys to do my lawns, and they were charging me a fixed amount per year, but they would get me to give them three checks: one for the spring, one for sort of early summer, one for the end of summer. And then they would bid on my snow removal, and they would ask me for a check in October and a check in for January or February. And I said to the guy one day, I said, why don't you just give me a price for lawn and snow for the whole year and let me pay you monthly?
Mhm.
Because my revenue from the apartments is monthly, and it would make a lot more sense from a cash flow point of view. And he
Yeah.
said, well, I don't really do that, but okay, I'll do that for you. And then the next year when I met him, I said, so how many of your customers do you have on a monthly plan now? And he said, oh, just you. And he failed to see the value of, because from my point of view, it was going to smooth out my cash flow. Can you imagine what your business would look like if you had a regular 40 or $60,000 a month of checks being cashed every month?
Yeah, and that's the thing, is like when you look globally, you're like, okay, you do 2.6 million in revenue and 500,000 in EBITDA. However, the timing of when you took over this business is the worst timing that you probably could have closed on the business.
Mm-hmm.
And so like you really just need to survive until May and June, and then you'll be in a much better position. So like right now you need to make the decisions and the moves that you need to make to get to that point. Um, One, you need to survive, but also not lose sight of the fact that you know this time next year you'll be in a better position, right? It's
Well,
or you might not even make it. Take it to that point if you don't execute now.
well, I mean, if we want to take a step back and create a lesson for everyone that's going to be listening, I mean, you've done your deal, but figuring out the required working capital and what portion, the term we use is net normal position in working capital,
Hmm.
because the enterprise value of a business is supposed to be inclusive of that.
Yeah.
And so if you start, like you said, you started off in the worst time of year, if you end up accruing, let's say $100,000 in debt over the next 6 months, and then you start running, you've actually paid $100,000 more for the business
Hmm.
because you've had to make this further investment, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And from the point where you start making money on a cash flow basis, where money's coming in as it's going out, well, then you're going to be off to the races going forward. But that initial hole that you're digging right now, that's with you for the ride.
Yeah.
And as you're profitable over the years, of course, you're going to pay it off. But effectively, this means you've paid more for the business than you thought.
Exactly.
Yeah. Um, and I'm just trying to think of what other sort of ideas that I could give to you. So pushing out payables as long as possible, trying to figure out how to bring in payments as quickly as possible. That's inducing people with the credit cards, but only if they pay within a certain, very tight time frame.
Mm.
Um, People like American Express, I've been an Amex card holder for a really long time, and in my business and personally, and I keep getting these invitations for these Amex small business loans,
Hmm.
and they're term loans up to 36 months, up to a couple hundred grand. Um, and I'm in Canada, so I don't know if it's available in the States, but I would probably bet they have some kind of similar program.
Yeah. So
Uh,
lending tree came back. One of the companies like Snapcap or Fundera, or through NerdWallet, one of them came back and said, I can get you a term loan for 300,000. Um, and I wasn't sure whether it's because it's tough, right? Oh, okay, the term loan I got to take right now and start paying on, and I have this unknown versus a line of credit. Oh, if I get access to the 100, 170, whatever, then I can deploy it as necessary.
Well, here's the strategy to look at this is if you complete that cash flow forecast that I described,
Yes.
and you estimate the outflows and the inflows over the course of the next 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
If you see that the ultimate hole you're going to have to fill is let's say it's 250 like the previous owner suggested, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And you secure 100 and would you say you had 170 of line of credit?
I have 100,000 currently, 170,000, another 170,000 line of credit like through Blue Vine is what they've
But
offered.
it's a very expensive one.
It's the expensive one, yes.
Right. So then if you were to take the 100,000 line of credit you already have, and you
Mm-hmm.
know that in the next 60 to 90 days, you're going to end up forking out close to 100 grand in expenses anyway,
Yes.
then something like that Amex loan, if you were to take 150,000 over 3 years,
Mm-hmm.
that would cover half maybe of what you need.
Mm-hmm.
But the money would only be sitting in your account for like the next 3 months before it would be deployed anyway, and you'd be into the line of credit.
Yeah.
So that superfluous superfluous interest that you would end up paying on money that's sitting in a bank account,
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be for that long.
Yeah. That's, as especially as we get into the landscaping season, I would start to pay that down as quickly as possible, right? And exit that term loan.
Well, I wouldn't,
You
because
wouldn't.
if you're going to cover half of this gap with a 3-year term loan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then if you pay it off with your excess cash this summer, you could end up having to take another similar loan next fall,
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
right? So I would pay it off over the course of the 3 years. And you know, your monthly financial statements are going to be so important. Your monthly P&L and your monthly balance sheet,
Mm-hmm.
to know how much money you're actually making or not, and to know do you have a I would hope you have accrual accounting in place there.
They're currently working on, like, my account's still working on converting over the QuickBooks from the company.
From Okay.
But we're gonna do accrual based.
Okay, so you want accrual because you want to be able to look at the balance sheet and see what your payables and receivables are.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and and while things are tight, you're going to want to keep this Excel cash flow tool in place,
Yeah.
so that you can look at those receivables and say, okay, we're owed 40 or 50,000 today, and here's what we expect in next week and the week after that and the week after that and the week after that.
Mm-hmm.
If you can get a good chunk of your smaller customers converted over to paying you with a credit card, it can solve a lot of this problem. It's just going to cost you that discount fee.
Yeah.
So that, which is the same as the Blue Vine origination fee of almost 3%.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So if you were looking at, like I said, the two options that I was presented with, like, um, the Blue Vine was like the 170,000 like line of credit, and then there's the other one, which is the 300,000 term loan. I don't have all of the details on that, but I had previously thought, oh, the term loan would be a bad option, but now that you've like walked through it and kind of talked through it, I can see like the benefits of that, right? This spreading that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I think that the term loan coupled with the line of credit and a few extra credit cards to help you push out payables
Yeah.
is probably the solution, but without mapping out a forecast of
Mm-hmm.
the inflows and outflows, you don't know specifically just how big the hole is.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it may not be a $300,000 3-year term loan that you need. It may just be 140 or 150,
Mm-hmm.
together with the line of credit.
Yeah. Yeah, because the two scenarios, like you had mentioned earlier, are we don't get any snow events and I just burn, right? Because I have no billable activity. And then we just burn. And then I can't survive April when I have huge payroll, and I couldn't survive till May to get paid out on landscaping. Or the other scenario is I kind of want like the snow to happen faster while I'm a little like much more liquid. And then the snow will allow me to bridge the gap from, let's say, March and April, right? And when snow stops, you're transitioning to the spring. So it's really like those two scenarios for me.
Yeah.
And the
So,
worst is like nothing happens and you burn through, and then you're out of everything and you're out of options and essentially out of business.
well, I mean, I'm very familiar with winter living where I live, but I know that, on down on the eastern seaboard of the US, there can be a little more, warm weather mixed in with the winter. Is it normal to be regularly salting and walkways and things just because frost can make things slippy?
Yeah. So the best is that so peak season, I'm at 25 employees. Now down to like my 4 or 5 like core people that like just you need to retain them. They're the best.
Yeah.
Um, so the ideal is we get rain during the day and it freezes overnight.
Hmm.
And these are like all like commercial 24-hour, 24/7, like shopping centers, commercial like businesses, HOAs and stuff like that. So the best is like, hey, a freeze overnight, we got to come out and do a couple saltings, right? Because I already have like those employees are already fixed expenses, and we send them out to do all the work first. Um, so that would be ideal, is these light events. And that happens, hey, it rains during the day and then it gets cold overnight. You
Hmm.
got to get out there and pre-salt, and then that melts, right? And then it can refreeze in the morning. So you can get like a pre-salt and a post-salt event. And I think that those are um, very profitable on their own. So that's kind of ideal. You really don't, out of the gate, wouldn't want a massive storm. Um, but the salting events are likely, even with the exposure to like warmer, because what happens is that if it doesn't push down, like the Arctic front doesn't push down from like up where you are in Canada, it can be warmer, but then it still drops. You
Yeah.
know, it is a little more mountainous here, so it can drop to below freezing.
Um, and if it isn't a bad stormy winter, does that mean things will begin quicker in the spring? Is that good or bad for you?
Um, I think the I think that is fairly consistent. Like we might be able to get to the ball fields and the athletic field work earlier in February if nothing happens. Um, but usually like you don't see like the grass and like the landscaping mowing that doesn't kick in until April, no matter what. The weather patterns here in March and April are fairly consistent from year to year.
Okay.
It could be colder or rainier, but yeah, it's rarely warmer and you start earlier.
Okay. And as a very last resort, what sort of conversations have you had during your process of getting your loan with the banker about this business and its seasonal nature? What you mentioned that it's interest only for 6 months. Is that because it's a seasonal business? Did they offer to do that for you, or was it something you asked for?
It's something that I asked for because it's seasonal, and they agreed.
Hmm.
So, I think as a last resort, I'm sure that they would perhaps like maybe even delay a payment of interest or two as a last resort. So I had the 100,000 line of credit with them, and I called them first and asked about increasing the line and said, look, this is not sufficient. So what they said is you need to get to 250,000 in AR, and then we can increase the line to 200,000. I said, okay, well, can you fund in a week? Because a snowstorm can put me there, but I'll be out of business in a week. if you guys can't fund it within a week, after I show you, the AR is at 250. So
So in my experience, don't put big hopes on getting more credit from the same place.
yeah,
Um, Typically banks like to, once they make a loan decision, they're funding this transaction, then the next time you want credit from that same lender, they're going to want to see like 2 years of performance,
yes,
right?
yeah,
um and yeah, and the reason is twofold. um Number one, there's somebody at the bank is going to say, well, why didn't he know he needed this credit before he made his application?
yeah,
Right. And so that's going to be like the voice of doubt somewhere in that organization.
hmm,
And they're going to say, like, let's just see how this plays out. Let's see if he can make his payments on time and if he's a good customer. You make all your payments on time for 2 years and you go looking for more credit, they're going to want to lend to you because you'll be demonstrated to be like a good customer.
yeah,
Right. But I think from these other tools, you're going to be able to band-aid this together to get yourself through to spring. But the cash flow forecast is going to be a necessary tool because next year you're not going to have that interest only period with the bank.
exactly.
So you're going to get into the spring of 23 in a hole. Then you have to make enough money to get out of your hole and build up a mountain of money tall enough to last you through next winter.
Exactly.
Right. So this is going to be a lean, very tough year for you. And so everything that you can find or think of over the course of this next year, you're going to have to do to tighten your belt.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, because it's not even going to be able to like dig out. It's also going to be, I still need to prepare to not be in this position next year, next winter. I'll have to build up the working capital to be ready for a winter event.
And that's why I'm saying you don't want to pay back that term loan early, because to pay off the term loan, then go back looking for another one next year, that's not good. Like, one of the hallmarks of being a respected business person is just to have a plan and to know what your needs are.
Yeah.
And so, once you take that term loan, if it's a 3-year term loan, you're going to put that into your cash flow forecast as an outlay that you're going to have to make every month. And so even if in the summer you have the cash to pay it off, that's cash is going to be part of the money you set aside to get you through the next winter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Is there any advice around like applying for these things and like how they impact your business and personal credit, like the inquiries? So is it like, oh, apply for as much, should I apply for like a second like business credit card now, since like that just I got the first one like last week? Is it kind of, hey, hit them all quickly?
Yeah,
Um,
from what I understand, if you have multiple hits within a very narrow window, the credit bureau interprets it as you shopping for credit.
okay.
And so from what I've read, and I'm not particularly an expert in this area, from what I've read, I understand that it has a less impact than if you go looking for a new credit card every month.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that's what I was trying to wonder about this. My Wells Fargo application for 100,000, uh, it'll be, they'll render the decision in 7 to 10 business days. The Blue Vine 170,000 line, I think that they're like ready to go whenever you sign. Um, so I was like wondering, like, okay, if I accept the Blue Vine, does Wells Fargo in the next like week see that I just got that and now they, decline, or do I say a Blue Vine like, oh, I'll wait 10 days and then I'll sign with you, and sign to Wells Fargo and the Blue Vine on the same day, so that way they don't.
Yeah. Are so in the I mean, you're being asked to personally guarantee all these things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So once, even if they don't know about each other right now, and
Mhm.
they all grant you the credit, they are going to do a series of soft hits over the course of time, whether it's every 3 months or 6 months. I'm sure different organizations have their own timeframes, but
Okay.
they will do a soft pull regularly on you,
Okay.
just to see what your situation is. And
Okay.
so if they don't notice it today when you're applying for these things, they will certainly know when they do their next pull. They'll see all the different credit facilities that you have
Okay.
access to. And there are certain triggers, right? Like there certain lenders are going to have policies that if they see you exceed, if they see you go over limit with another lender, they might even trigger something in their agreement with you.
Hmm. And then they can pull.
Yeah.
Pull.
Like people who are in a really desperate cash crunch.
Hmm.
I mean, one of the dangers is that they could have their lines of credit cut,
Okay.
right? And so I've actually told people before in the past, hey, max out that line of credit by writing a check to deposit it in another bank.
Okay. Because if it's out, then they can't call it. But if
Oh, they can
it's
still call it.
unused, they can still
They
call
can still call it. They can give you a 30-day demand letter,
it. Okay.
but at least you bought yourself a month
Okay.
versus them simply changing the limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So they could also like, oh, I have the 170 limit, soft pull in a month, and realize, oh, you've got another 100,000 out there. We're reducing your limit to 100,000 or less. Okay.
For your line of credits, what kind of agreements are they going to make you sign? Are they going to make you sign a general security agreement or just a personal guarantee? Like,
Um,
is it the company going to guarantee it with the company's assets at all?
no, so I think they're both unsecured.
Okay.
Uh, I think the blue vine is a personal guarantee. I'm assuming Wells Fargo is probably going to be the same way, personal guarantee.
Okay. Another avenue that you could look at, which could be another tool in your tool chest, would
Hmm.
be to talk to some factors.
Yeah.
Yeah, like factors are people who will give you an advance towards the purchase of a receivable.
Hmm.
And again, if you add up all the fees, it ends up being, quite expensive. But it is, if you get that giant 5-foot snowstorm
Yeah.
and you end up suddenly with hundreds of thousands of dollars of receivables and all of the labor and expenses to go with it, factoring at least some of your invoices could be a solution. And so, but again, it's hard to engage with a factor in an emergency situation. You want to create the relationship in advance and understand exactly what they'll factor. See, the factors don't necessarily examine you and your credit worthiness.
Hmm.
They examine the credit worthiness of your customer.
Okay.
So you could, for example, present a list of your customers to a factor, and they might say, well, we would buy invoices for this outfit, and this outfit.
Okay.
But just having that available could be the thing that gets you, allows you to slide through a tight spot.
How does it look from like the customer perspective? Because this is one of the things I was, concerned about. Well, one is factoring being able to accept sliding in behind the SBA. Um, they
Oh,
tend to have an issue there. But then two would be how does it look from a customer perspective if someone's switching to factoring? I'm not familiar with that
yeah. Well,
that perspective.
I'd forgotten there for a moment about the SBA, so it may not even be an opportunity for you.
Yeah.
But it's generally not perceived as being that good outside of certain industries.
Okay.
So I mean, there's certain industries like trucking where there's a lot of factoring going on,
Hmm.
and people don't really see it one way or another. They're just
Okay.
like, oh, these guys factor and those guys don't.
Okay.
But if it's something new to someone, then they might, question, why are you doing this? You would have to smooth it over with them. But yeah, with an SBA general security agreement on the business, it may not even be an opportunity for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's tough too, right? I'm like working on just that acquired transition, building trust and relationships. And oh, hey, switch over to factoring. Like, why? Oh, are you not, are you in trouble? So it's it's in a tough position to be in. But I think you're right. Like the SBA, I don't think it's really going to be an option because they're not going to willingly slide in behind the SBA, and the SBA is not going to move for the factoring company.
Well, it depends on what the agreement says, because here's the argument that a factor would make to the bank. They would say, Mr. Banker, what would you rather have in this business, the receivable or cash? Because what the factor is doing is that they are simply accelerating the receipt of the funds for a fee.
Yeah,
So while the receivable leaves the table as far as security goes, cash comes onto the table.
it's true. Yep.
Right. And so this is why it really comes down to what does the agreement say, and then having that conversation with the lender. Just with your SBA banker, just to see if it's something that is possible. But I would talk to the factors first.
Okay.
To see what they'd be willing to do for you. Because if they're not willing to do what seems useful for you, then that's probably not an opportunity to go down. Because again, the SBA lender you have has given you the $100,000 line of credit. You don't want the answer to be, yeah, we'll let you factor, but we're cutting your credit line.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
So again, this is the tricky part, is you want to build a tool chest of different tools that you can use. You mentioned friends and family. It can be one of the most valuable tools in a scenario like this, but I wouldn't go looking for friends and family money unless I had that cash flow forecast built and I was confident in it.
Yeah.
So that I would know that whatever I asked them for, I would certainly be able to get back out to them.
Yeah. Yep.
Because those loans are not going to appear in your credit report.
Yeah. So it's kind of more of like, those would be kind of like the last option to reach out to, right? I mean, personally, the last ones I'd want to.
It depends on them and their sophistication and their position. So if you have a relative who's a multi-millionaire and you want to borrow 50 grand from them, it's a different story than if you go asking for your grandmother's last 20 grand.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And before inviting anyone that you're related to into this, I would want to have that forecast so that you're certain about what this is going to look like as it unfolds.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I hope I was able to give you some ideas to work with, Chris.
Yeah, definitely. It's much appreciated.
Yeah. And to me, the low hanging fruit is to change those invoices, put a due date, and start accepting credit cards within 5 days of invoice.
Yeah.
Because you very well could convert some of your customers to much earlier payers. And you could even be collecting some of this money before you pay your payroll. Like, I mean, you could solve a lot of this problem if you can accelerate the receipt of money.
Yeah, I can see that happening too, especially on the snow, more so than the landscaping. I could see people wanting to pay it out quicker, especially, I don't know. I mean, we're at the end of the year, the weather looks like it's going to get cold here in the back half of the month, and like the first salting events could occur like December 20th. And I mean, you might, if I provide that option on the invoice, they may just want to, hey, let's pay this out before the end of the fiscal year, and let's just get
good point.
Get it out the door.
Yeah, it's true. All right, man. Good luck.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. Have a great day. Let me know how it goes.
Will do. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.